Good evening, Bahamas. You're tuned in to MB12, broadcasting from Cable 12 Studios on Robinson Road. Coming up tonight in news, the government unfazed by a negative assessment of its mortgage relief plan by credit rating agency Moody'S, and the opposition responds. Plans to help Bahamasair rebound, a PLP founder's final plea for recognition, plus your favorite TV shows and movies when you want it. We've got those stories and so much more. I'm Paige McCartney, and MB12 starts right now. Welcome once again to MB12. Despite a recent report by international credit rating agency Moody'S, which hinted at the possibility of a credit downgrade if this government follows through with its mortgage relief plan, Minister of State for Finance Michael Halkitis and Minister of State for Investment Kailis Roll say the government will still move ahead with that plan. Here's our Charisma Robinson with more.
Although they remained tight-lipped on the specific components of the analysis, the ministers maintain that the PLP's mortgage plan is workable and is something that struggling Bahamian homeowners need. Moody's was quite candid in its assessment of the PLP's 10-point plan, telling its investors that it's a credit negative and also calling one aspect of it a moral hazard. But Minister of State for Finance Michael Halkitis says Moody's got it wrong when it said that the Christie administration's mortgage relief plan demonstrates a lack of commitment to the stabilization of the national debt. He also says Moody's incorrectly assumed that everyone who is behind on their mortgages will be covered under the plan.
As we said, we're going to work on a case-by-case basis. We want to specifically deal with those persons who were paying their mortgages but through circumstances beyond their control face the prospect of loss of their homes. All right, and as we said, we are very satisfied, and we are aware of all the fiscal constraints of the country, and we are satisfied that our plan is workable and that we will implement it in a manner that will not endanger the economy of the Bahamas.
The plan also includes a commitment to bring legislation to protect homeowners who have already paid back more than a certain percentage of their mortgage loans. It's a commitment which the credit agency says could become a substantial fiscal liability to the government if enacted. Moody's estimates that the cost to the government will be up to $250 million over 5 years.
It's really, really needed in the Bahamas at this time. All you have to do is look at the press and see the numbers of homes that are in foreclosure, and you realize that something has to be done. We have to take all matters into account, but we also need to recognize we have a mandate from the people to do something about this foreclosure crisis.
When asked if the government is afraid of a downgrade if it moves ahead with its plan, Roll wouldn't answer, but also said he believed Moody's analysis is flawed.
When you look at the report itself, the report says potential liability and potential in a sense that they're looking at this big number as opposed to the case-by-case basis. So you have to look at actual, and I'm sure when you look at the actual numbers, the assessment will be a lot different. The picture would be a lot clearer than it is. It's only a potential is what they're saying in the Moody's report. It's not based on any factual or actual numbers.
Initial consultations with banks and other lenders have already begun, according to Halkitis, who says the government will begin formal consultations with other financial institutions soon. Now, Halkitis says the initial response from banks has been positive.
They want to help. They appreciate the fact that we'll be consulting with them and that we've asked them for consultations. And as we said, it's in best interest of all that we save homes, not only for the moral imperative of keeping a roof over people's heads, but if we can do something about the housing market, that helps the economy as well. So we've had very, very positive response so far.
When asked if they agreed that the plan would actually encourage mortgage holders to default on their payments, as predicted in the Moody's report, both ministers opted not to comment. Reporting for MB12, I'm Charisma Robinson.
While the opposition also responding to the international rating agency's assessment of the PLP's mortgage relief plan today, former Minister of State for Finance Vargo Lang told our Nakia DeVoe at Government House that Moody's is just stating the obvious. Here's her report.
While in government, the Free National Movement said that the PLP's mortgage relief plan was just too much. And today, Lang said that Moody's scathing assessment of that plan further supports that belief.
I'm not surprised, because it had always been my view that what the PLP was proposing was impractical and really could not work in any meaningful way. But they do now have to deliver on that particular promise, and I think that they will find it very difficult. And I think what Moody's is saying is, not only is it difficult to deliver on it, but it has some meaningful consequences for the country if they are in fact able to do so.
Those consequences, said Lang, include a huge expense to the government, more borrowing, and a further downgrading of the nation's sovereign credit rating, something that could deter investors and increase the country's borrowing cost. Lang said it will be almost impossible to convince commercial banks to go along with the mortgage relief plan.
It is a very difficult business proposition for the banks. And if the government is going to bail them out, then that's going to be a cost to the country. And the government can only get that money either by taxing people to get it or by borrowing the money. Well, if the PLP's complaint in the first instance was that we have too much debt and too much borrowing, and you then have to turn around and borrow for that purpose, then that creates an enormous challenge for them.
Another possible consequence of the PLP's plan, according to Moody's, an increase in mortgage delinquencies in the Bahamas. Lang wholeheartedly agreed with Moody's fear that the plan could actually result in a significant jump in mortgage arrears.
All of the other persons who have been faithful in paying their debt obligations have to ask the question, why should I continue to do so? So that's the moral hazard I think that Moody's is pointing to.
Lang also said he believes that the PLP knew that the plan was too far-fetched, but it was simply a ploy to get more votes.
My view is that the Progressive Liberal Party put that mortgage plan out there as a vote-getting mechanism. I suspect that they knew that it was impractical, and I think that they knew that they couldn't do it. But it was put out there as political pandering for the purpose of getting votes. Maybe that is what happened. Now, the piper has to be paid, and I think that they will find it very difficult to pay that piper.
Lang says that despite what he calls the obvious negatives of the plan, Prime Minister Christie will have to do all he can to deliver in fear of voter backlash. Reporting for NB12, I'm Nakia DeVoe.
Well, yesterday, the Free National Movement released the names of its 4 Senate picks. And today, Desmond Bannister, Heather Hunt, Kwesi Thompson, and Shivargo Lang were given their letters of appointment at Government House this afternoon. Bannister was appointed leader of government business in the Senate. Leader of the opposition, Hubert Minnis, described him as a man of good judgment and keen insight in public policy. He added that Lang is a seasoned politician with passion and a lot of experience, and Thompson is passionate about youth development. As for political newcomer Heather Hunt, Minnis says she's dedicated to the public service.
I am pleased that this team combines seasoned individuals with emerging talent, committed to the common good of all Bahamians. In this spirit, we pledge our very best in the service of the Bahamian people. We pledge to work with the government, inclusive of improving the nation's economic well-being and in combating crime. We pledge also to be vigorous and unrelenting in the promotion of accountability and transparency in government.
Well, Minnis says he believes the FNM has a strong parliamentary team, and he's pleased with its representatives in the House of Assembly and also the Senate. Well, the government may have to scale back on some initiatives planned for the next fiscal period to meet other financial obligations. That's according to Deputy Prime Minister Philip Brave Davis, who conducted a tour of Bahamasair's facilities today. Davis also learned how much money Bahamasair needs from the government over the next year to actually stay afloat. Bonnie Toot reports.
As the government begins budget preparations, Bahamasair is requesting a $22 million subsidy. The minister responsible for the national flag carrier says he is unable to say if it will receive that amount. However, he says he does know the government will have to borrow money to cover the airline's deficit. Before touring Bahamasair's head office for the first time in his capacity as Deputy Prime Minister, Philip Davis told reporters that the airline's average deficit is around $21 million a year.
First of all, it means that we'll have to borrow sufficient to cover the deficit. And it may very well mean that we'll have to, the initiatives that we have initiatives that we have planned to implement within the next fiscal period. We'll have to visit them to see which of those we scale back on and which of those we place more emphasis on.
Davis says the government is very concerned about the airline's accumulated deficit. He says before coming to office, the PLP was under the impression it was around $300 million. However, he says he now knows it's much more than that. According to the 2009-2010 Bahamasair report, the airline has incurred an accumulated deficit of $473 million since it was incorporated in 1973. Bahamasair has never had a profitable year since it was created. After reviewing Bahamasair reports tabled in Parliament over the years, Davis says he believes there are ways to make the national flag carrier more manageable, if not profitable.
If not profitable, manageable. If it's not profitable directly as a carrier, it will serve to spur other aspects of our economy by, for example, opening routes that other carriers could then, after it's been developed, come into and bringing, as it were, bodies to the Bahamas.
He says the government also hopes to make Bahamasair the carrier of choice in the Bahamas and some international markets. While some initiatives planned for the next fiscal period might have to be revisited and even scaled back, Davis says there are two areas the government will not compromise on:
crime and creating jobs. Other social matters may have to take a backseat for a moment because of the deficit that we meet, but crime and jobs will not compromise on making a major assault on those two issues that impact our country today.
Bahamasair employs more than 650 people in the Bahamas and Florida. Reporting for NB12, I'm Vonique Tude.